Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the event so far. Once again, my name is Lucy Story. I'm the marketing manager for schools and colleges. Welcome to our third schools workshop of the day. So Andrew Gillespie, Vice Principal of Dover Bricks, is going to take you through skills for the future. Andrew, I'm going to hand straight over to you.
Thank you very much, Lucy, and welcome to everybody. I hope you're having a great conference and series of workshops. And I'm delighted to be asked to talk about future skills, which is something I'm very interested in. So we're going to look a little bit about skills and what they might be, what we might need for future jobs, and then look at education in the UK and how that matches and how that supports the development of those skills. I'm going to begin actually by talking about taxis. I know some of you are in the UK already. Others, I'm sure, will come and see us very soon in Oxford. But on your way, you may well stop off in London and use a taxi. The drivers of these taxis need a special license, and they have to pass a series of tests. And these tests can take 3 to 4 years for them to complete. And to be a black cab taxi driver, you need to be able to learn over 300 routes around London, so that somebody can get into the cab and ask you to go from Buckingham Palace to Lord's Cricket Ground, and you know the best way to get there. And if there's any problems with the roads or any diversions or whatever, you can work your way out. So it's a very, very intensive test based on your knowledge of the roads of London. And you'll see when you visit, you may have seen them already, you'll see various people driving around London on mopeds and motorbikes with maps in front of them. And what they're doing is they're preparing for this test, which is called the knowledge. It was introduced in 1865, I think. And whenever you see someone on a moped with a map in front of them in London, they're probably preparing for this test to get the license. And what that emphasizes is the importance of knowledge. And certainly in the past, knowing things was in the hands of a few people. It was in the hands of a limited number of people, and knowledge was incredibly important. When I was at school, which was a long time ago again, we had entrance exams for university. And to prepare for those exams, the school used to let us out, and I travelled to Liverpool Library, this library here, beautiful library, over an hour away to go and get knowledge. Because the only place I could find the articles I needed to read was in this library. So over an hour away, simply to access some information to put into my head so that I would have knowledge, somebody else wouldn't, and I could pass that test. So knowledge has been very, very important in the past. It means a lot, and it hasn't been available to everybody. And I suspect, a number of you, if you look back over your careers and you went back 10, 20 years, you probably, in 20 years ago, families would come to you needing your knowledge because they couldn't access schools' websites. They couldn't access schools' information. They probably may not have travelled as much. They may not be aware of the opportunities as much. And so you offered fantastic knowledge that they didn't have. And again, knowledge was the key. Some people had it, some people didn't, and having it was the route to success. But the world changes, and we take a black cab taxi driver, fantastically experienced, worked 3 or 4 years, and then I come along in 2005 and I've got Google Maps, and actually I've got the same knowledge. I've probably got more knowledge potentially. So suddenly that game change is a game changer because knowledge is more accessible. Knowledge is becoming, Tony Wagner at Harvard talked about knowledge becoming a commodity. So it's more easily available to everybody. Yes, I went to Liverpool Library. I don't need to do that now. There are billions of searches on Google every day. I can find stuff on Google or Google Scholar that wasn't in that library. Knowledge is much more readily available. And similarly with your role, yes, they need knowledge from you still, but you perform many, many other functions to add value. So, the families will come to you and they will ask all sorts of questions. Should my daughter come now? Should she come next year? Should she do A-levels? Should she do all these questions? And part of what you're doing is passing on knowledge, but actually they can access some of that now. But you're doing many, many other things to be of tremendous value to them and to us, I might add. So just for a second, if you've got, I think there's a chat box you should find. What I'm interested in is, obviously, some of the skills you're using now, it's not just knowledge, you're solving people's problems. They're coming to you with questions and you're saying, well, you could do that or you could do that. You're using problem-solving skills. What I'd like to do now is just have a quick think about a typical week or year of your life working, advising families, what sort of skills are you using apart from knowing things? What skills do you think you're using? And could you just type that into the chat box? So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to tell me what you actually do in your job that makes it so fantastically valuable to everybody. Okay, so Candy's put communication and personal skills, a few more from others. Strategy, brilliant. Communication. What else are you doing for the families that are seeking your advice? What else do you do? Building trust, excellent. Yeah, thank you. Multitasking, absolutely, yeah. Probably juggling lots of families and lots of questions and lots of different tasks at the same time. Anything else? I'm sure you've recruited lots of people for your businesses. What are you looking for in them? Yeah, so Abigail, fantastic. Imagining ourselves in their shoes as parents, so kind of empathy. What does it look like from their perspective? Logic, yes, so you can have knowledge and then use it very badly. So using logic to help find those solutions. So there's a lot of skills there, and some of those are touching on, if you heard Barnaby this morning talk about soft skills, and some of these are the soft skills that are important. So yes, we need knowledge as a base still, but we've got to think about what we're doing with it. So my interest in this kind of began thinking about some work by the Oxford School, Martin School, which is linked to the university. And they do a lot of work on kind of key issues. And one of the things they were looking at in about 2013 is they were looking at the impact of automation and on technology on jobs. And this created a lot of interest because they reckoned at that point that in the US, something like 47% of jobs were going to disappear. And what they were interested in is, well, what jobs wouldn't disappear? What are the skills that are difficult for computers to imitate? And they drew lots of this data. And if you just have a quick look at this, I won't go through it all, but if we look on the left-hand side of the slide, something like public relations work, and a lot of aspects of your work require social intelligence to build trust, to imagine yourself on the other side as the parents. That's difficult for a computer to do. So that sort of job is relatively safe. Whereas washing dishes, we can automate that. That sort of job is not so safe. So what you do in your work is you've got a lot of EI, emotional intelligence. You're reading families and the dynamics and what is the right moment for them to go abroad. You're probably doing a lot of the middle stuff as well. You're doing a lot of creativity because you're finding creative solutions. Or maybe you want to start with a summer course. Maybe you want to go at that point. Maybe you could do that, then that. You're building, in some cases, whole lifetime educational experiences for them. So you're using a lot of creativity. That's good because that's difficult for a computer to replicate. So something like a fashion designer, a biologist, that's a job that's relatively safe from computerization. A court clerk, I think, is the person who just kind of scribes and writes down what's happening in the court. Well, we can just record that these days and have transcripts. And then the last one was to do with other types of skills which we're looking at. Oh, I don't know what I've done there. We're looking at particular manipulation skills, like a surgeon. We still haven't yet got to the stage where technology makes that easy for computers to replicate. For you, I think it's a social intelligence and creativity probably are the most relevant to you. So what we're seeing then is that change in the world is changing jobs and is changing the skills that we need to do these things. And they produced on the BBC, they had a little website where you could type in your job and see whether, according to this study, your job was likely to exist in the future. So, of course, everybody, myself included, went in and typed what they did. Teachers came out as not very likely to be automated. You think a lot of what teaching is about, what you've put down there, communication, imagining yourself as a student, building logic, those sorts of things, not very easy to replicate with machinery and things. So teachers were quite relieved. And I couldn't find educational consultants, but things like advisors and management consultants, the sorts of things you're doing, again, they're relatively safe from automation because of the range of skills that you've got. So of course you have knowledge, but you have huge amounts of other things as well. And so in schools, we should be thinking about the things that you're looking for when you recruit and seeing how we can prepare and develop those. And it isn't just about automation. You know, we're dealing in a complex world. We're dealing with complexity and multitasking, and you know, thinking about the knock-on effects of anything you do, and thinking about the implications of globalizations and the ethics of what you do. It's an awful lot to juggle when looking for the skills that you're going to need. We're living in a time of, you know, the last 12 months, incredible uncertainty, where we're being asked to make decisions with very little guidelines. We haven't done this before. So we're in a completely different world. And it's very interesting to look at people and how they cope and manage that uncertainty. For some people, that is very scary because they don't have any rules. There isn't a handbook that says, do this. And others have a slightly greater tolerance to manage that and weave their way through and accept some things work and some things don't work. But managing uncertainty, managing this incredible speed of change. You know, and you can see that in the business world, can't you? You know, if you're in the world of cars and we've gone from, you know, diesel to electric, and the speed of change in that industry in terms of reinventing yourself and reinventing what your business does and the skills you're going to need is quite huge. So we've got a lot of stuff going on. And of course, as I say, the knowledge is at the core, but we need to be able to develop other things to use that sensibly and effectively. So I'm just going to show you a few studies quite quickly, but just to kind of give you, you know, some of the words that depends which study you're looking at, but there's a lot of overlap in the types of skills and the types of things we would be looking for. This is by Ernst & Young, a management consultancy, and they began by looking at the world of work. So what does the workplace look like? How is that changing? And their estimate was 35% of activities will be automated. We'll be doing jobs, you know, the classic, we'll be doing jobs that don't exist, but it's true. I went on to LinkedIn last night and was looking at our students, past students, and you know, they are in industries, game design, creative industries that didn't exist. Certainly when I was talking to my careers advisor, they're doing, you know, app development, they're doing knowledge management, they're doing talent acquisition and diversity. You know, there's a whole range of things there that are newer areas as society evolves. So we've got new jobs, we've got an agile workforce, anytime, anywhere. You know, we've got a gig economy, we've got flexibility, we've got people who will often have portfolio careers, several careers at the same time, working for different employers. So we've got a different landscape. And in that landscape, we want to know what do I need to survive and thrive? And they talked about kind of personal attributes. And actually on the right, again, if you go back to what Barnaby was talking about this morning, soft skills, some of the soft skills, but also these in-demand skills in the top right. So we're just going to look at those and then look at a couple of other studies and then think about schools. So where are we? There we go. So this is Ernst & Young's model, which I quite like. Emotional intelligence, understanding yourself, monitoring yourself, understanding others, managing your relationships with others. That's pretty key in the workplace. Cognitive flexibility, that's your multitasking that you talked about earlier, and being able to juggle different demands and projects at the same time. Creativity, finding new solutions, innovating. Collaboration, working together. And collaboration is an interesting one. You know, a lot of people talk about collaboration, but when you watch what's happening, it's a group of people doing their own thing. There happen to be 3 or 4 of them, but it's not really a team. You know, collaboration is when the output is greater than those individuals would have achieved on their own. So you know, learning how to collaborate. I get lots of people telling us they're a great team player, but when you're looking for what it is they've actually done, have they got the skills to work with others to produce, you know, 2 + 2 is 5. Complex problem solving and you know, dealing with, again, that uncertainty idea and dealing with multi-facets at the same time. So, you know, schools should be thinking about, we should be thinking about those things and how students leave our school. This is the World Economic Forum. I'm sure you'll have seen this list before. And again, very similar in some of the areas: ability to analyze, not just know, but to develop a chain of reasoning in what you're doing. Learning strategies, blimey, that's important, isn't it? That's how do I learn? How would I do this again? How would I do this differently next time? What is it that worked? So do I reflect on my learning? Again, we'll talk about that in schools, but when students do a piece of work, do they just hand a piece of work in, boom, and they look at the mark and that's it? Or are they thinking about how to do it in the first place, what to use in the first place? And is the discussion about that? Is the discussion not just about what you've done, but how you did it and how you do it again next time, and so on? The Alvin Toffler is this very, very famous quote, isn't it, about Alvin Toffler talking about the illiterate being not those who can't read and write, but those who can't learn, unlearn, relearn, and so on. It's about constantly learning and thinking about how you learn. Problem-solving skills, being creative, social influence, and that surely schools are a key part in developing that skill and area. Technology, that's important, clearly, resilience, and think again how much of those have developed for all of us in the last few months in terms of our familiarity with technology, our resilience in terms of relearning things and getting it wrong and learning how to do things. The collaboration of staff and students as we moved online and learning how to use technology more effectively has been quite extraordinary. And to me, it's one of the highlights of the last 12 months is to see people learning from each other, sharing, being open to doing things in a different way. And it's all completely non-threatening. Everybody's supporting. That's a great thing we would want to keep. And I'll just flag this because you may well know this already, but if you don't, have a look at the OECD. There's some interesting work there on what education globally should look like, and they got this project by 2030, and they look at a lot of really interesting things about schools and education, but they talk about transformative competencies. That what is it that students, what do we want students to have as a result of their education? Bottom left is about responsibility. They talk about student agency. So really important, what do students take ownership of? What do they decide? What do they think about in relation to themselves, their relationship with the outside world, and their relationship with society and the planet? Creating new value. Are you simply implementing what you've been asked to do, or again, finding new solutions, or identifying new problems or opportunities? Are we developing the questioning approach to say, well, what if I did it a different way? Or what if there was another thing? Or are we just, here's how to solve 2 + 2? And again, a very interesting one, I think, this reconciling tensions and dilemmas, to realize, you take any problem and if you look at it through a different lens, you're going to come up with different ways of solving something and resolving it and so on. We're working through at the moment the assessments for this year, and you talk to different people, you get very different perspectives, and whether it's different teachers, different students, different families, so you're juggling, and there is tensions, and so we have to learn how to manage that, how to be comfortable with that, and how to make the best of it. So I say there's some very interesting research going on there about what schools do globally, and what the outcomes might want to be. So we began talking about knowledge. I've talked about some of the changes going on around us. You all know many in your own country, industry, and life. And so therefore, maybe the game's changed to thinking more about skills. If the jobs are evolving all the time, the challenges are evolving all the time, maybe I've got to make sure people have the skills to cope and as I say, thrive in that thing. So maybe we should think carefully about the transferable skills that schools have and provide. And therefore, we're always, when we're looking at schools, for example, we're looking for shortcuts. We're looking at anything. We're looking for a shortcut. What's a quick insight into things? And grades are very important. Grades open doors. Grades get you, offers, obviously. And grades can reflect huge amounts of skills. The A star can be a recognition. If that subject and exam is right, it can be a recognition of lots of skills. But grades in themselves are just one thing. And what I think you as an agent should do, you as a parent should do, a family, you know, what we all should do in terms of developing our societies is think not just about that letter, but think how it was arrived at, what else was going on, and very importantly, kind of what happens when you get to the other side. So if a grade opens a door and I walk through that door, what happens then? So I get to, I'll take myself, actually, I passed exams and I got to university, and then it was all, what do I do now? Because possibly I'd been drilled to get there, but not given the skills to make the most of it initially. So I think we should, you know, educationally be looking at the other side and where we're going, where we're landing, and what do I need when I get there to be happy in myself and to you know, contribute in whatever. And this is where we could now talk a bit about schools and the role of schools and so on. There are many different things that schools provide. I've put 3 here, but that's actually just probably touching the top of the iceberg. But I'm going to look at the curriculum. I'm going to look at teaching and learning. I'm going to look at the learning environment. But you know, I say we've got to think about the social environment as well. There are other things. But if on the left we've got what Ernst and Young are saying, these are really important things, then on the right we've got how can schools support and develop that. So by curriculum, we mean what's on offer. What does a school week look like? What does a school year look like? And clearly, by changing what's in the curriculum, you can change the opportunities that people have to develop these skills. And that's true at Overbrook's level. You know, we're regularly reviewing the curriculum. Because if it's not in place, it's going to be more difficult for people to access these things and develop them. But it's also true at a national level. Again, the OECD's got some interesting stuff on, you know, how does curriculum design affect outcomes, and how does that change in different countries over time? How many hours of school should you have? Should those hours be in a classroom or activities? How many contact points with the teachers do you have? How many formal lessons? What's in those formal lessons? And you will know better than I actually your education systems around the world and how they differ, and what it is that makes the UK curriculum particularly appealing. But it will still vary between schools. You've still got to look at schools and how schools are thinking about the curriculum. So, for example, if we took on the left that we want students to research, then what's in the curriculum to help drive it? What's what we would call the contributory factor? What enables that to happen? Some students will naturally get up and be curious, but can you support that, encourage that with something in the curriculum? If you want students to do project work and develop project management skills, what's in the curriculum to enable that? So when you do your curriculum planning, what does that involve? You know, teamwork, as I say, teamwork I think needs to be worked at. I don't think teamwork just happens just because you put 4 people together. So what is it that can help build those skills, and what is it that it creates a situation where that's going to be encouraged and supported? Same with creativity. Now, I will take Domus as an example, but you know, obviously we're talking broadly about UK education. But we introduced the extended project qualification. I can't remember how many years ago. We were one of the first to do it. We were very interested in it, and it's more, you know, it's increasingly widely adopted, and it is a wonderful thing because it enables somebody to pursue their own area of it, research, to get passionate about something, to identify a problem that somebody may never have identified before or an issue, and to become an expert in it. It's very, very empowering. Now, we don't make people do it, but it's in the curriculum as an option for students. Higher project qualification we introduced more recently for younger students. And again, it's potentially transformative, isn't it? It's not you're doing what I tell you to do, it's you're leading your learning. Student agency, you're leading your learning. We do, as you know, the Think program, a whole range of kind of opportunities for students to develop something they're interested in. The Plus program will enable them to develop their critical thinking and their skills for university. The Discovery program is working in teams, so that's a team-based research project. The Oxbridge program is obviously preparing them again for those in terms of thinking skills. I mean, to pass those Oxbridge tests, the logical thinking you need is extraordinary. You need to develop that skill. The Track program, many of you will know at the international school, again, a very project-based, pulling together different issues around society to come up with a solution, building on your own experience. What a wonderful thing that is. And then having a curriculum that's got art and music and drama. So you sit there, if I think about moments in school life where I go, wow, I sit in a music performance or a concert and it's just, this is unbelievable. And you're looking at awe in some of the things that are being done. And I listened to an extended project presentation. I think, wow, that's just incredible. Look what you've done. But that's got to be, you've got to have a curriculum that supports that, and a curriculum that where that's kind of seen as something you might want to be doing. We had a few weeks ago our presentations of EPQ, and I mean, I just look at titles like this and think that is just genius. If Shakespeare is translated, is it still Shakespeare? You just want to run with it, don't you? Now that's a student getting excited about something, going off to find out about it, coming back and telling you about it. That's developing a lot of those higher level skills, and I think that's, if we can create an environment where that flourishes. And then look at some of these other ones. These are from this year. Demographic change, the economic implications of human memory. Wow, where's that going? You want to sit in that talk, don't you? You want to know what that's going to do. Sustainability. If we want students engaging with the world around them, and I think, if I remember, this was students developing student accommodation, thinking about how sustainable it would be. So, challenging questions, student-led, critical thinking. That to get there, they obviously will accumulate knowledge, but they're doing a lot more than just knowing things. They're if in the world of education, this thing called Bloom's taxonomy, looking at different skills, and we are going from knowledge to things like creativity and judgment, which are incredibly powerful skills. So curriculum design, local, national. Again, you will. We will get students coming from around the world because their curriculum doesn't suit them. Their curriculum doesn't give them the chance to do the things we've just been talking about, and they want the depth, maybe the depth of thinking. They want to focus in a bit, maybe in sixth form, on the things that enable them to do complex problem solving, rather than perhaps sometimes a bit more knowledge-based stuff. And the second thing was about our approach to teaching and learning. And again, that's what we would think about as a school. So Doe Books and other schools think about a lot. Talking to teachers about learning, and I suppose that's the other thing, is the focus is on what students learn. The teaching enables that learning to take place. It's not about, I've got a set of great teachers, nobody learns anything, but the teachers are wonderful. Well, that isn't wonderful teaching. So looking at the learning that takes place. It was fascinating. I was at an educational thing this morning, actually, where they were talking about lesson observations. So a key part of seeing what's going on in your school is lesson observations. Typically in lesson observation, people sit at the back. They go into a lesson, sit at the back, and they're watching the teacher. And this chap was talking about, well, I sit at the front and I watch the students. That's an important mind shift, I think. So what's going on with the learning? And that means, what are you asking in terms of questions? What are you setting in terms of the types of task? Whose learning is it? Are people only doing what you've told them to? Are they thinking about, and this is a strange word, metacognition, and it used to frighten me, but it's really important. Are they thinking about how they approach something? Are they thinking about what worked and what didn't work? And that process, as much as the artifact, the thing they did, is deeply significant. And is the approach encouraging ambition and curiosity? Is what you're doing encouraging students to develop those things? This was, I can tell you, this was my son is at the school, and he was set this homework, and he came up to me and said, "Are we a body with a mind or a mind with a body?" And I thought, blimey, year 9. That's fairly thought-provoking. That's an ambitious question. And off he goes, and his mind is buzzing, and he's thinking, and he's going, what do I need? How do I go solve this one? And what do I need to think about? And what perspective am I looking at that from? But that's more challenging, thought-provoking, stimulating than what year was the Battle of Hastings. So we got some stuff there, and then so the questioning about, and that's always interesting. Looking in lessons at the questioning about. If the questioning is so it's just generating yes/no answers, that's not going to help people develop those complex problem-solving skills that we want. We also want to think about the tasks that are set, the homework tasks that are set, the tasks that are set in the curriculum. We haven't done this one yet. It's a fairly famous one, but I hope we might get a chance this year to do it. But this one, for example, is about students interdisciplinary. Get students together from different year groups, maybe, or different subject areas. Put them together and say, right, we're going to land on Mars. We're going to build a colony on Mars. What does that look like? And they have to think about the current society they're in, what's good about it, what works, what doesn't work, their education system, their government system, their finance system, a whole lot. And then what would they want it to look like and why? That sort of exercise, is opening it up. It's opening it up to student input and student things. And setting tasks that aim high. Don't aim for the bottom and assume people are down here. Give them the opportunity to share. I came across this last week. I hadn't realised it, but again, it was with my son again. It was in maths, and they ask them, they give them some work, and then they say, right, choose something extra to do. What do you want to do, and how hot do you want it to be? How chilly hot? So is it mild, medium, hot, or super hot? And that's reflecting the complexity of the problem. So students are choosing a mild chili because they're not that confident, they just want to try a little bit out, or if they want to give it a go, they go for the super hot and they see whether they can tackle that. Student ownership, engaging, thinking about that, it's developing things. So I suppose what we're saying is, are we seeing the teaching and learning approach that is, I have information, I have knowledge, I'm the taxi driver, I'm Liverpool City Library, and I'm going to pass it from here into your brain? Or is it about helping that brain to grow and creating an environment where it can flourish for itself? So curriculum, teaching and learning approach, and then I put learning environment, but again, it's learning environment, social environment, and so on. So what's the environment in? And that's just, is it a safe place? I don't know if you ever read the Jeff Bezos letters to shareholders. So he always writes a fantastic letter about his views on the world, and Amazon and so on. And there was one, it was quite a few years ago, but it was about, do you know what, we get it wrong. We want people who can get it wrong. It doesn't matter, 7 out of 10 times. As long as when you get it right, it's big time right, and it compensates for everything else. But failing's not a problem. It doesn't matter, as long as you learn from it, and overall we're winning. And it was talking about a culture of failure, where failure is not seen as a terrible thing, because if failure is a terrible thing, you're never going to try it. He's very keen that, as the organization gets bigger, that they keep entrepreneurial spirits. And so we've still got that kind of curiosity and enthusiasm that you've got when you're an entrepreneur. You don't lose it just because you're a giant corporation. And that's a challenge for many businesses, obviously. So same at schools. How do I get ambition? I believe in you. I believe you can do interesting stuff. I want you to think that. I want a growth mindset from you. I don't want to tell you the answer. I want to put up a picture and get you to ask some questions about it. There's some lovely stuff going on at the school at the moment where it's led by, here's something for you to look at. What questions does that generate? Or here's an area we're going to look at. What would you want to know about that topic before we ever study it? Getting people curious, getting them to own their learning. Collaborative, and I say different lenses, so that they can, as you were talking earlier, look at it from a different perspective. And I think, Dobas, for example, that the whole nature of the environment, the first names and all that sort of stuff, encourages that safety to try, and that willingness to give it a go, say something, try out an idea, that willingness to work with others, which is just so lovely. Okay, so we've got those sorts of things. We want a world where that's happening. So just a few more slides, and then if you've got any questions, we'll take some questions in the chat box. But this is what I was saying. I was saying the best education is not just about passing exams. It doesn't mean that the certificates are irrelevant, but it just means what else, what did you develop to get that piece of paper, and what's the combination of things that you've got. And therefore I'm convinced that UK schools, I'm convinced that Dover is about helping students develop the skills they need for the future, and therefore they leave, whenever we do student kind of surveys and things, and parents, it's about confidence. They leave confident that they've got the sorts of things that we were talking about earlier that they're going to need. And then I saw, you might have seen again, there was something in the news this week about a speaker in China saying students who are solely good at testing will not be able to succeed at the exams of the future. Grades aren't the be-all, i.e. it isn't just about learning knowledge and repeating knowledge. You've got to have a curriculum and an assessment system and a culture and a school system that is developing these other things, because that's the kind of, the big exam is the exam of life type stuff that you're going on to. So people are thinking about this all around the world, you know, and you visit schools around the world and you see some interesting progress being made everywhere. And I've just put this slide in following the thing I was at this morning, really, because I thought it's quite interesting to think about, again, UK schools and what you look for, what families look for when you're trying to guide and problem solve for them. And this, again, I put it in just thinking about what Barnaby said again this morning about, you know, knowing your schools and knowing what it is. The independent schools, as you know, are inspected by the ISI, the Independent School Inspectorate, which report on two areas. One is the quality of student. I mean, they report on the safety of the school and the regulations, the compliance, but they report on the quality of the achievements of students. And they report on how students develop as individuals. And I'd forgotten, but if you look at what they're reporting on pretty much what we had in the Ernst & Young slide. When it comes to achievements, exam results are there, but so are artistic and creative achievements, skill development. They are looking at study skills, attitudes to study, cooperative, collaborative skills. It's all there. When they look at personal development, they are looking at decision-making skills, making decisions for themselves. They're looking at kind of moral compass type stuff. They are looking at awareness of the world around you. So that inspection framework actually is trying to pick up on academic progress as measured by formal assessment, but achievement progress and development progress in the broadest sense, which covers all of the things that we've been talking about and all of the models we're looking at. And so I suppose that is a good starting point for you to think about you know, the breadth of insight that can provide, certainly for schools, to make sure that they are, you know, there's a set of criteria, and they are about, you know, they do look at resilience, and they do look at complex problem solving, and they do look at use of ICT, and they do look at all that stuff. And so, you know, you know, if you want to be a great school, you should be doing that stuff. So that's you know, again, other signs of indication of what's being assessed. The exam system we've got is one measure, as we say, certificates and the grades and stuff, and it's an important one. And they are rigorous. They do look at analytical skills. They do look at judgmental skills. They do look at the ability to you know, this coursework to develop your research. So they will reward a number of the things we've been talking about. But there is a debate now, and what's happened this year in terms of assessment. There's a debate beginning, certainly in the UK, about what are we actually assessing? What should we be assessing in the future? So if all these things are so important, and these are the future skills, are we assessing them all? Are we assessing that collaborative stuff? Are we assessing that decision-making stuff? How are we doing it? Are we doing it in the right way? And what should we assess, and how should we assess it? Is the formal exam hall the right way? Is more project work? Is more use of technology? You know, that's beginning to get quite interesting, with people beginning to go, where would we want this to be in the future? And if we took those things, we are assessing all the, you know, through the subjects and whatever, but are there other things we want to add in? Are we assessing global mindset? Are we, what are we, you know, is the assessment system right for the next 10 years. Pearson, as you probably know, are one of the, well, there are many things, but they're one of the big exam boards. And I was very interested last week or the week before, they issued a survey, a study that they're asking parents and students and schools about these particular skills. And again, look how familiar that list is. That's pretty familiar compared to the ones we saw earlier in the talk. And what they're saying is, how well do you think schools or your school is developing these things? Because these are the ones that this is their list. How well are you developing these things? And second question, how well are we assessing it? So if digital literacy is vital to the future, how are we assessing that, or how are we going to assess that in the future? And I think that's an interesting initiative to pull together some thoughts about, we know where we are now, where do we want to go in terms of recognizing these things? So I think that's probably me done now. Thank you very much for your time. I've just left some time for questions if you have questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sophie. I'm the marketing manager at Doverbrooks. We're now taking questions, as Andrew said, following his presentation. So please do submit those to the chat box, and we will start from there. Just having a look now, so we've got a first question coming through. A few thank yous.
So I'm just reading one. Free the teaching type of skill. COVID has given us a knowledge of resilience. Certainly has, yeah. It's now skilled and prepared for decades. Future curriculum must develop in a direction to assess learners so they can jump and assess perfection. Yeah. So I think that's, what's that telling us? It's telling, I mean, we have learned huge amounts from COVID. We've learned a lot about ourselves. It's innate, it's given us challenges that's developed flexibility, creativity, all the things we've talked about. And you know, one of the discussions we're having, and I'm sure many schools are, is how do we retain the best bits of what we've gained? And use we use Teams, we use OneNote. The use of that, for example, has enabled some really interesting collaborative projects and different ways of working, and we would certainly want to retain that. It's enabled different ways of feeding back to people, audio feedback, for example, not just, you know, and again, all of that we would want to keep. So yeah, I think we want to come out of this stronger, obviously.
Thank you, Andrew. We've got a question here, which is, do you find that students from different regions have different aptitudes in developing the skills they need for the future? Do international students have any advantages in developing these skills?
Well, that's interesting. I'm not sure it's. I mean, I suppose we're talking about skills for everybody to develop and working on, everybody, regardless of region. You know, maybe at slightly different steps. But clearly, that the education system you're coming from may have had an impact in terms of the curriculum and the teaching style, or even the school that you come from, the teaching style and so on. So I don't think it's necessarily region. Because as I say, even the school could have an impact. You know, someone could come from a UK school where it's been a bit more closed. What I think we find, or I find, with students coming from abroad is that's a big jump. I mean, that is a big decision. It's often student-led. So the type of person who's doing that, you know, in one sense, is potentially more advanced. You know, if I think about my schooling, I went to the local school, I stayed there. You know, I wasn't making big decisions. So the type of person who's coming to us often does think for themselves, is curious. I mean, I do a lot of the interviews and talking to students. It is that curiosity. They want to ask more questions. They want the small classes to be able to challenge and put their own views forward. So I don't know if that's representative, but certainly I think the students coming to us, if anything, have an advantage. Their social skills, you know, the confidence to come abroad, it's extraordinary, isn't it? It's incredible, and therefore they're potentially more socially, higher emotional intelligence, and others might be catching up. I don't know if that's answered the question, but I don't think it's a, you know, there might be differences in knowledge base. There might be differences in teaching and learning approaches that they have to adjust to, but that's equally true of UK students. But the fact they've made that move gives them a lot of, you know, I can never stop being in awe of their achievements simply for making the move.
Thank you. Our next question is kind of similar to our session, but also linking on from Barnaby's talk earlier, and that is, what aspects of online teaching do you want to keep post-COVID?
What aspects of online teaching? The use of, I mean, having some use of something like OneNote, as I say, enables you could set a homework and people in different locations can clearly work on that together, and you've got a nice collaborative project. It enables students to have access to their work in one place on their phone and whatever. So I think we want to keep that going. But the basics, I mean, what was interesting is, when we were looking at online lessons and so on, the basic of great learning is true whether it's online or not online. Are you providing challenge? Are you providing variety? Are you providing pace? Are you providing challenge in the tasks you set? Now, whether that's online or in a classroom, those are essential, whatever you're doing. So I think we'll carry on using technology more, and I think that prepares students better for what they're going on to. But the fundamentals of great learning, like great teaching, I think are the same. Does that vaguely answer it?
Yes, I think so. Our next question is, how much time do you teachers have to focus on these skills in class when they're already under time pressure to cover all of the knowledge that is required for high-stake exams?
Well, that is a great question. That is a great question. And again, it's almost, I don't know, is it the beginning and end of the talk? It's if you see a specification as purely knowledge, it's very easy for teachers to focus on content. But actually, the exams have, again, as Barnaby said, the exams have developed, they don't just want content. You've got to be able to do something with it, and you've got to be able to apply it to different situations, and you've got to be able to think. So the teacher is there, I think, is there more to facilitate the development of those skills and thinking skills. If I'm sitting there and I'm telling you, I mean, I don't know, I just teach business, so here's a definition of a limited company, and here's a definition of a PLC company, and who cares? I mean, you can go and do that yourself. You don't need me to do that. So, but me to help create a situation where you can think through, should I be a private company or a limited company? Go and think about that. So I've got to create an environment to develop the higher level skills, rather than spending all my time on content. Does that make any sense again? So there is always that pressure, but you've got to hand some of it over, I think. Students got to own the learning and own some of the content stuff.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Sorry, just another interruption. Sorry, apologies. But it was also interesting in some of the OECD stuff, talking about the fastest development is often when there's more time on things like the activities, and it's working with teachers in a different context, giving you the skills and all the things we've talked about to then apply to your actual subjects. So a world where you're just in a classroom being talked at, I mean, it may be fine, but it isn't helping some of the things we've been discussing today.
Thank you. We have another question here, which is computer science and coding in digital languages is becoming an increasingly needed skill, especially given the impact of COVID-19. Is this something that's taught at Dover Brooks and specifically the international school? Yeah.
So we do computing, and so as you'll probably know, there's ICT, which is more on the software side, which we used to do, but to be honest, students increasingly, they know that themselves anyway in most cases. So we focus on the computer science, which is more on the programming side. And you're right. Again, if I looked at what a lot of our students, or a number of our students, have gone on to do, it's in that area. And again, what excellent logic skills, project skills you're building through that sort of activity. So yes, it's actually a growing department. And I imagine it's going to continue to grow. It's very important. And some other countries, I mean, in fact, somewhere like Estonia, are very developed in that area. So again, these regional differences.
Great, thank you. We have another question here, which is about the resources that you used in your presentation. The question is about, for the slide which says, will my role be automated? What website did you use to find that information out about you as a
So that's funny, because whenever you show that slide, everyone immediately wants to go, right, is my role going to be automated or not? Don't worry, Olga, you're fine. I think if you type into Google or any other search engine, if you put in something like BBC, it was a BBC website slide. So if you put in probably that question and then BBC after it, you'll find it. But we can send it to you after.
Excellent, thank you. We have another question here about soft skills, and that is how are students at David Brooks encouraged to practice their soft skills?
Well, that's interesting. That's probably partly culture again, isn't it? And partly the whole learning environment or social environment. I think it's funny, it could almost sound like a gimmick, the idea of first names and no uniforms or light touch uniforms, could almost sound like a gimmick, but it's actually just representative of an approach in which we are working together, and that breaks down a lot of barriers, and I think that encourages then the willingness to work with other students, different age groups, and almost the age thing or the hierarchy thing is suddenly less of an issue. So I think that helps people feel they're part of something and develop that. The way in which one says we don't have lots of published rules carved on the wall, but our whole approach, I think, encourages people to respect other ideas, other people, but other ideas, and to be curious about them and to want to understand them. So soft skills are soft things, and they're culture and stuff is a very difficult thing to get your head around. It's very difficult to suddenly pick it up and plant it somewhere else. But it's about the environment that you create, and how you set an example, I suppose, is how we work ourselves. I never know whether I've answered these questions, but anyway, I hope there's an answer somewhere in there.
Thank you very much. Conscious we're coming towards the end of our session, we've got less than 10 minutes left before the next conference talk today. So if you do have any additional questions, please do continue to submit these through to the chat box or the question box, and we'll come on to those shortly. We do have another question here, which is that there's a popular idea that the jobs that students will be doing in the future, some of which don't exist right now. How do we prepare students and help them develop those skills for jobs that we don't know about just yet?
Well, I mean, that is your classic, isn't it? And there's all sorts of stats kicking around about, 35% of the jobs that people don't exist now. And as I say, when you look at the types of careers that people are pursuing, they are these doctors and lawyers and whatever that's still in common. But there's so many job titles I would never have heard of. But the key then is what we've been talking about today, isn't it? Is I'm not trying to prepare. In most cases, I'm not preparing you for a specific career. A lot of students have no idea what their career is going to be. Many students don't end up, myself, you end up necessarily where you thought you're going to go. You zig and you zag, don't you? So people don't know where they're going. In many cases, they're probably not going to end up where they thought they were going to end up. They may well end up doing a combination of different things anyway. So planning. You're very lucky if you can plan the rest of the next 10 years of your life. So therefore, it's about having the skills that you need to be adaptable and flexible to what comes along. And if you can think, and if you can frame problems, and if you can work with other people, and if you can know how to find solutions to things, and if you can and some things we haven't talked about, if you can negotiate, if you can persuade, I mean, these sorts of things as well. If you can do those things, then you'll handle any career. So I think, sorry, so the underlying message is build the skills, and then let people find the garden they want to flourish in, rather than necessarily trying to nail the job.
Great, thank you. We have one similar question here, which is at Dover Brooks, how do we prepare students and help them develop the skills they'll need for university specifically? Yeah,
and that is another good thing. If you remember the kind of slide about the bridge, that is the one that worries me. Not Dover, kind of generally is, well, I've got a bit of paper, I walk across the bridge, I turn up at university, and suddenly this is a whole new environment, and I don't really know what to do, and I don't know how to manage my time. So partly. Again, if you're putting, well, take the content question. That's an interesting one, isn't it? If you're beginning to get people owning their learning and searching things out and learning some things for themselves, that's what they're going to have to do at university far more. I think the critical thinking, you know, we are very happy for you to challenge and question. We hopefully we encourage that for you to look at things in different perspectives. You know, one of the things universities don't want is you get there and you think there is an answer, because in the vast majority of situations there is no answer, there is a debate. So can you debate it? So I think, again, I would hope our approach to teaching and learning encourages that way of thinking. I would think our approach encourages independent learning, so that even if I end up in a university and the contact time is minimal, I know what to do with the rest of the time. And again, almost the relationship with staff here means that, you know, you're not afraid to work with the professors or the leading somebody in something, because you know, they're not some scary thing that you I mean, one of the things, so I did some work at university, and one of the things that we used to kind of encounter was, you know, in a big lecture, people don't want to put their hand up, they don't want to ask any questions. Even in seminar groups, they find that incredibly intimidating. So they're not engaging with their learning because they're terrified. So we were looking at strategies to overcome that. I hope the students leave here, they're perfectly comfortable. You know, they know that they can have a conversation with somebody, and again, there's not that fear of failure or embarrassment.
That's perfect. Thank you very much, Andrew. We had lots of lovely comments that have come through as well. So lots of people saying thank you very much for your presentation today.
Pleasure.
We only have a few minutes left before the next conference session. So we will wrap that up and leave that there. Thank you very much, Andrew, for your presentation. Thank you to everyone that's joined us as well, and for your lovely comments and all your questions as well. It's been a really, really great session. So thank you very much, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Great. Yes, enjoy the rest of it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.